Ty literally just landed and rushed here, and so giving him a minute here to settle in. I'd like to welcome everyone and say hello to the panel today. We're going to be talking about Hollywood and the digital consumer, how technology, content, and services establish the next level of the consumer entertainment experience. My name is Ira Rubenstein. I'm with Sony Pictures Digital, and I'm going to moderate today's panel. I'd like to thank Victor and Digital Hollywood for arranging today's terrific panel. We have an exceptional group of people up here today. And today, we're going to have a very informal roundtable type discussion around the digital consumer entertainment experience. And to start with your consumer experience as a conference goer, I'm going to tell you that there won't be any PowerPoint presentations. Instead, we're going to have a discussion around where we are at today, where we've come from, and where we believe the digital consumer entertainment experience is going. And specifically, how these companies up here are planning to serve that digital consumer going forward. Now, I personally remember being at conferences over 10 years ago, and the promise back then of a broadband universe, Wi-Fi, 500 cable channels, and what's obvious to me is at least we're quickly approaching that today. Maybe not in that same sort of vision, but the ultimate consumer experience. Today, you have broadband wireless access on airplanes, hotel lobbies, by the pool, Starbucks, and I ran into a gentleman today who's actually putting it on the Seattle ferries up north. You can go online and download the latest TV episodes you missed. Your TiVo allows you to take onto your laptop or your PC the shows you've recorded. Location-free TV or Slingbox allows you to watch TV from anywhere in the world, as long as you have a broadband connection. We're now in the world of the ultimate consumer choice. The digital consumer is deciding what they want, where they want it, and what they want to consume. And today, we're going to talk about the challenges and opportunity this reality gives us. So I'd like to start by introducing our panel, and I'll start with, first on my immediate right here. John Zelenka is the Senior Manager of Business Development for Tribune Media Services. He's responsible for identifying and pursuing strategies to grow revenue and profit within the entertainment products division. His duties include industry research analysis, business planning, strategic planning, product development, and partnership evaluations. Just recently, they announced their new Zap to It online on-demand guide, and we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Next to him is John Penny. He's Vice President of Business Development for HBO, responsible for strategic planning and development of HBO's new business opportunities. Before joining HBO, John was an Executive Vice President of Licensing Biz Dev for ACTV and overseeing development of licensing technology for interactive television. And prior to that, he worked at Scient. Next to him is Rob, General Manager of Entertainment Video for MSN, charged to ramp up strategic growth in entertainment-related content for MSN Network and its customers. He's responsible for the development and programming of MSN's digital media and entertainment-related properties. Rob joined Microsoft in '91 and has worked in many different units there. Next to him is Josh Brooks, Director of Marketing and Content Development for MySpace, where he oversees media partnerships, content acquisitions, original content development, and strategic planning. Most recently, he spearheaded the launch of MySpace film area, and he's overseeing the MySpace comedy channel. Prior to that, he was one of the founding partners of Fanscape. Next to him is Ty Amon Taylor. Ty is Senior Director of Interactive Products from Comcast Cable. Previously, he was the Creative Director at Home in '97, led their efforts in the early days of broadband. He was also Chief Architect of Meta TV, where he generated interface patents and led the design of interactive television portals for Comcast and EchoStar and other MSOs. Next to him is Eric Flanagan, VP of Programming at AOL. Eric oversees 4 distinct entertainment sites on AOL, AOL.com, MoviePhone, AOL Music, AOL Radio, and AOL Television. Prior to that, he was the VP of Programming for Buena Vista Datacasting as part of their MovieBeam VOD service. And then prior to that, in the early days, he was a Senior VP in charge of Mr. Showbiz, ABC.com, and Movies.com. I think the one thing that this panel all shares is they've all been in this space for a very long time and have seen trends come, trends go, people talking about where we were headed and what reality has become. So, as I said, today we're going to be very informal. I'm going to throw out questions, have the panel answer as they want. I'm encouraging the panelists to throw out their own questions. And hopefully we'll have a good, engaging conversation and talking about this emerging space. So I'm going to throw out the first question. The first question anyone wants to answer, just jump right in. So based on your experience in this space, what's been the biggest consumer experience lesson you have learned so far? If you had to pick one. Anyone want to go first? Go ahead, John.
I can go first. At Tribune Media Services, basically, we create and we aggregate and distribute information about television and movie content at a very basic level. And one of the things that I've come to understand is that consumers have and always will consume in many different ways. For example, when we distribute our television and movie data, it's seen in basically every household across the United States on any given day. It's seen in print, it's seen online, it's seen on screen, and it's seen on more and more handheld devices these days. So there really are a lot of ways that people consume information, and as I've seen trends sort of come and I've seen trends go, the thing that I always try to keep in mind is that there's a lot of room for a lot of different ways to consume information, and I think that's just expanding. It's going to continue to increase. All the things we're talking about at this conference are a testament to that. But I think there's a lot of room for a lot of different people to experience entertainment in very, very different ways. So I've noticed that.
I would agree. I think one of the things that we've been focused on for years is really enabling people to be productive on the commercial software side of things wherever they want, and on the content side of things, be able to experience content wherever they want, whether it's in front of a PC, on a laptop, on a plane, on a portable device, in the living room, on a mobile device. And I do think that people's interests change depending on where they are, the way they want to consume the content, the amount of content they want to be able to consume changes depending on the scenario. But in general, people want to consume that content in various forms, in various places. And we've seen that more and more people sort of fall into kind of these three behaviors of trying to control the media that they see. They want to be able to watch it when they want to watch it. They want to condense it down so that if I'm watching a 30-minute news broadcast, I may only care about 8 minutes or 15 minutes of that, so I want to be able to condense it down to the pieces that I want. And I want to be able to combine the different media types across different categories. I might want to watch a piece of local news, a piece of national news, a piece of sports, a music video, and really be able to create my own viewing environment that's most applicable to the scenario that I'm in, whether I'm in the living room or waiting for a train. So I think that's been a big trend that we've seen in MSN.
I think from a MySpace perspective, I think that if someone can embrace the viral element in an organic way, that thing will turn gangbusters across the internet and across other platforms, even on mobile devices as well. And so at MySpace, I think the idea is that if we give these people the tools to make something that much cooler, that much more viral, and continue to come up with new products to develop, I think we'll find ourselves in a place where creative elements, creative video keeps going on, and our users are only going to be more excited about that. So I think the general idea is that what we found is that keep building on products that make the viral element larger than life.
Yeah, I think the pivot to me seems to be between, I don't know, what we all started to describe here as sort of individual behavior for how you want to customize your media consumption experience for you, and where it's getting interesting, and MySpace obviously has a big place here, and AOL is stepping up in this regard as well, as how are you customizing the content for others to see? Like, how are they looking through, it doesn't even matter whether it's music videos or photos or movie content, how are they looking through it through a frame that you've put around it so that other people are experiencing that trailer with your parody content tied to it, with your cut, your new music, your edit of the movie itself, your edit of the music video itself, that people not only want to make it better for them, they want to be glorified for the work that they're doing that other people are experiencing with the content that many of the rights holders who sit here and are in this building have so aggressively tried to protect up till now.
So are you, the sense I'm getting is consumer-generated content should be sitting next to professionally generated content, and that's the consumer lesson that you're...
I think it's happening. What I'm saying is it's happening anyway, and that the pivot is from that personalizing for me to personalizing my take for the rest of the world to see. And that's where the explosive growth that MySpace and other folks who are playing in this area have really seen is I want to contextualize that media, and I want to represent who I am by the way that I contextualize that media to others.
Right. I mean, look at what happened with the ringtone market, right? I mean, ringtones, it's, you know, on the surface of it, if you look at the ROI, it's sort of crazy that you can buy a song for 99 cents to play on your iPod, but you have to pay $3 to you know, play a short clip of it as your ringtone. But people do that because it's self-expression, because it says something about them, and I think the ability to create your own space in MySpace or in other products, or to be able to take content that others have created and do mashups in obviously ways that respect the rights of the copyright holder, or to actually create your own content, you know. And I think there's obviously a very popular site out there, you know, called YouTube that frankly was made successful largely because of MySpace, because people were taking the content that others created, you know, and showing it to all their friends. Say, hey, look at this great video of this guy lighting himself on fire, or you know, crazy stuff like that. But it was just stuff that they wanted to share with their friends. And so I think we are moving from this highly broadcast programmed experience where you're programming one-to-many to people taking control of the media and programming it for their friends. So it's a few cast or a narrow cast world.
Okay, John, I'm going to ask you from HBO because you're a guy up here with content. What do you think?
First, a question for the audience, because the overall question that was asked was, what's the biggest consumer experience lesson? Well, it really depends on where you sit in terms of, are you a distributor, are you a content holder, are you a technologist, are you a designer, do you do UI, whatever it might be. So I thought we could take a quick pop poll in the audience and just ask, how many people here are from the distribution side of the business, so pipes or the technologies that enable pipes to deliver content? Okay. How many people are here from the content side of the business who would be of, we'll call it, the traditional side of creating short form or long form narrative content? Okay, so a little bit more. How many people are here from the new side of the content spectrum, which is the viral content, more thinking about how you package and position and allow the consumer to do that, just as we've talked about in personalization? How many people are here from that world? A lot. Wow, that's really exciting. And maybe the last question is, how many people are here just looking for jobs? No, I'm just kidding. Oh, you are very, very well done. Okay, so I think the three biggest consumer experience lessons that HBO has learned, and this is, you know, from a very specific vantage point of being the largest premium subscription television service in the world. We're not ad-supported. If you haven't seen HBO, we're not ad-supported. But we actually have a lot of really great content that you are probably familiar with, Sopranos, Big Love, etc. But I think the three things that we sort of hew to, because we have this core brand that's very important to us as it extends out into new platforms, and we really do want to be exactly where the other panelists have said, where the consumer is, when they want the content in the format that they want it in. But we're still a company that generates a lot of narrative media, I'll call it that. So we really believe that easy beats complex. So a lot of what's still going on today is complex when you think about the broad scale of mass media. If you think about a lot of different consumer types, so the 12 to 22-year-old, right? The 22 to 34-year-old, the 30, I mean, I can keep breaking them down. There are different consumers. So the lessons are different for each, and they're becoming radically different for people under the age of, let's call it 28, versus, you know, oldsters like me. So we really believe easy beats complex in almost every one of those categories. Though the younger you are, the more you will try and tolerate complex to find a new experience that personally defines you, as someone was saying. Telescoping of analogous experiences is something that's always been very important to us. So we want to analogize an experience of premium subscription television in one format and bring it to another. It may not be the same. It may have additional features. It may use two-way functionality. So you could think of an HBO broadband product or an on-demand product utilizing the infrastructure that is provided to us by the cable operators like Ty and Microsoft and sort of MSN and other places, and analogizing experiences so our consumers aren't thrown into a wet pool of learn this brand new thing all at once, and make it real difficult, and all of a sudden the content seems to go down the tube. And then the last thing is that personalization really does drive multiple consumer experiences. And that's really important in narrative media, and as well in the viral form, where you need to appeal to many different sensibilities and many different ways of consuming media out there. And that allows you, wherever you sit in the 4 buckets or 3 buckets that we described, maybe not the job seeker bucket, but it allows you to position your company, if you think about personalization, and it's still very nascent, as gaining greater catchment over broader demographic swaths. And I think that that's a really good thing for all involved, because Rob and I were talking before we started, we need to get this industry much bigger faster. Sorry to take us so much time on
No,
that.
that's fine. Actually, I think we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the age thing. But before that, I'm not going to let Ty off the hook, because Ty's been around for a while, and Ty was at some of the very earliest trials with At Home, and been on the cable side as well. And what were some of the lessons that you've learned over the last few years?
Our perspective is slightly different being a network operator. I think primarily themes that you've already heard, such as simplicity, is sort of key for us. And the other key is as we develop our 4th tier offering with Sprint Nextel, is the notion of the quadruple play and what that means for consumers. And essentially what we found is that customers like everything on a single bill, and they like a single operator. And sort of the key challenge facing Comcast as a content distributor is integrating all of those services so that it looks like the same thing to the customer, at least from a product standpoint, regardless of the platform that they're on. So we agree with personalized content. We believe in self-programming. The key is sort of creating the platforms where you can richly do that on a mobile phone or on a PC or on the TV set, given the sort of different input devices and things of that sort.
Okay. So following up just on age, because you brought it up. Today, freshmen who are in college, sophomores, were born in 1987. I know I feel old. They were 7 or 8 when AOL was around in 94, 95, the heyday. And basically grew up in a network, more than likely, online, what have you. I think MySpace and Facebook and those sort of personal social network sites are kind of growing up in the next generation of what IM and the website might be. But getting to changing viewing habits, is it really a different viewing habit? I mean, I know my parents use a TiVo, and my mom even downloaded stuff illegally, even though I corrected her, trying to get her show. But maybe she's out there, but maybe they're abnormal. I don't know sometimes, but Is it a thing about is it like you were saying, is it a technology hurdle? Is it a content hurdle? We kind of talked about before this, what's really holding it back? Is it technology or is it content to get this business big?
Actually, can you clarify what's holding what back?
What's making this a real, and everyone doing it? Or you're talking about making this business big, but, movie links to them now, no one's, downloading a ton.
Well, I think that there are social tipping points where it's going to be more and more acceptable. The car dealer, nobody likes car dealers by and large. If you're related to anybody who's a car dealer, I apologize. But in the late 90s, they got disintermediated because anybody could do research on a car and find out what the price of a car is. And I think in the media and content industry, Steven Soderbergh, right before Bubble came out, he said essentially, there's day and date release now, it's just illegal piracy. So it's like you can get a movie as soon as it comes out on the Friday. So the issue becomes, At what point do content rights holders feel comfortable collapsing the Reese windows and sort of getting the wrath of the theater owners, or not paying attention to that? At what point do they feel comfortable doing that and doing day and date for everything across all platforms? And I think it's going to be the same for the car dealers when they realize that at lower prices. I'm not saying that, I'm not inviting anarchy, and I'm not suggesting that that's Comcast's view. I'm simply saying at some point you have to be comfortable with that because you're not participating in the value chain.
But again, so you go day and date, big deal. I can't really watch it on my big screen TV.
I'm not sure, why not?
Because you ever tried hooking it up and Joe Blow America.
Oh, by day and date, I also mean on VOD.
Okay, I'm talking about IP download, but you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. If it was Comcast, absolutely. It's hooked up to your TV.
And I think there are natural
Good point.
natural connected devices that are already in the living room, right? So I think that, in Seattle, we're lucky enough to be part of the joint Microsoft Comcast DVR trial, where we get a lot of this great technology so we can plug it into our great TVs. There's other devices like Xbox, or I would say Media Center Edition it's a fine device. I think it is still a little too complicated for most consumers, and it also doesn't really fit well into your AV rack. So we've got to get better there. But I agree. I think that as a technology guy, we need to make it a lot easier. I was actually talking over breakfast with a colleague of mine who's, he's used Vongo and he uses MovieLink and he uses Cinema Now, and everyone's a little bit different and everyone's got different rights, and we haven't made it as a technology industry easy enough. I think we've got a lot of the tools, a lot of the DRM tools in place, and we've got very flexible DRM platforms. And I think sometimes that flexibility breeds complexity for consumers, because when we go to the content rights holders and say, well, you could do anything you want, you can lock it down in any number of ways, everybody's going to come up with their own different schemes. And so, if I want to watch a movie from Sony, then, that might have different rights. I can watch that for 3 days within a certain window and only on this device. Or if I go to Universal, maybe they have different rights. We've got to work together to allay the fears of the content owners that we can provide great technology to protect their rights and make it easy for consumers, so that DRM is just it's something you never see. It's to protect against the edge cases. It shouldn't be something that the majority of consumers ever run into. It should just be there in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think John, you touched on simplicity a lot earlier. And it's really simplicity, especially when you talk about the IP content and getting that into the living room, onto the large screen, into sort of the lean back experience versus the lean forward experience of a PC. I think that's a hurdle. We're not quite there yet. Certainly with the MSO distributed content, that's an advantage. I would say there's a responsibility on the part of companies like mine who are responsible for engaging people, helping them navigate the sea of choices that they're facing. There are a lot of confusing choices out there about what type of programming is available. I think it used to really be, if you talked about the traditional sort of TV listings and movie showtimes business, you would talk about what and when, whether you were talking about a theater, whether you were talking about what time and channel a particular show is on. Really now we're talking about what, when, and where. And it's really the where that is growing like gangbusters. And it's really, a lot of people in the room raise their hands about distribution. And to me, that is what's really growing. It's not as much the content, although that's certainly growing, but the ways that you can access and view that content. So certainly when you talk about MSO, video on demand, pay-per-view, that's all on-demand content, broadband television, movies on broadband, mobile platforms. We all need to definitely do a better job of helping the consumer navigate that experience and understand where they can find this content, because that's going to be a really, really big issue the next few years as it's more available, and the trend is certainly not slowing down.
It's interesting. One thing that we started with age, and it strikes me as that there's a couple of things going on. We talked about some people in college who, were born when I was in college, and they have a very different view of the value of content. And I am not talking about piracy. I'm just talking about how they value content. And most of the people in the content industry, and I think as well in the pure distribution industry, I mean, Ty, this is not about Ty, he understands this, but there are a lot of folks in his shoes that don't, which is these people see the value of a bundle very differently on the content side Forget adding in all the other stuff that you can add in, the quadruple play and all of that. Very differently than folks who grew up, and I'll call it in the golden age of TV, which only ended roughly about 6 or 7 years ago as a golden age. I think that tied with the number of content inputs into the system from both the producers of narrative media or media that is professionally produced, and from Josh's company and what AOL is doing certainly in user-generated content means that big brands stand to be in a good position because they can come across a little bit more above the water, but it's that mid-tier brand that's going to have a lot of trouble. So value of media becomes very much in question going forward, and the reason why is I think we always have to come back to a consumer only has so many dollars in their wallet and so many minutes in a day. And what we really are all dancing around here, I think, is what is the future of large-scale media? And is there a future of large-scale media, mass media, call it mass across many platforms, and how will we all work together to preserve the economics of all of our businesses? Ty has phone companies and satellite companies. We've got the MySpaces of the world. These aren't direct competitors like they are in the distribution space. Certainly MSN has Yahoo. And the interesting thing is if you add it all up, traditional media, and you start to add up the value of the content on all of the platforms, the traditional big studio content, the value of all the subscription dollars in the premium TV business, you find it really hard, whether you collapse windows, whether you do anything, to make the whole pie grow a lot faster than it grew with the DVD boom, with the golden age of advertising on TV, $65 billion in advertising on TV, $20 billion on DVDs, in a year, all of these other platforms. So we really got to think hard, or else, you know what? There's not going to be a lot of money at the end of the day to keep this cycle moving. And I don't mean to be a naysayer. We really believe in it, but we've got to find a business model that works, and I don't think we have yet.
Okay.
I think it's a behavior thing. I think we're approaching a time when everyone up here has got an idea, a technology that will work, and I think it's up to companies like the YouTubes and the MySpaces and AOLs to allow their users to start dabbling in this world and knowing that it can go from one platform to another really easily. And I think all the companies up here will benefit in the future. Not quite sure. I agree. I don't know what the financials will be later down the line, 2 to 3 years from now, but it's that behavior that we're trying to change to make it really easy. And I think we'll find in the next couple of years that people will find the telephones and the cables and the satellites all coming together on one bill is convenient. And it's convenient because I learned how to do it 2 years ago. Through XYZ company that made it so easy. And
Are you trying to change 35 and 40-year-olds' behavior? No, I mean, honestly.
it's inevitably it'll get there. I believe it will.
Good, because I would love to be more involved, like with a MySpace environment, but with a 4-year-old, it's hard. And I know that with 22-year-old is very different. So you can make it very easy for them. And I think that's going to be the real locomotive that's going to move all of this along. It's sort of like I don't want this world of technology have and have-nots, and pardon the cable IPTV world, but I don't want, grandma and grandpa being relegated to just that and not having some of these amazing experiences that might require a bit more investment in time and energy.
I think what it is, like I said, it's the behavior, and all goes as far as my father, who now has a cell phone, can now text message me. Right. That's a huge thing. Come on, my dad being able to text message is a monster.
No, I think you just...
It's happening. It's all coming together. It's like he orders his tickets online for movies, for airline tickets. So my core demographic that we all talk about at MySpace, this maybe 18 to 34, or actually 18 to 28, something like that, that's MySpace. But the idea of social networking and all that stuff, it can happen for 55 and older. And all these tools are going to happen soon. And the end result is all your stuff is going to actually work. Just give it a little time.
I think
just 2 years, we're fine.
You look at digital photography as an example where, like, at almost any age level now, people understand how to put photos up online and go retrieve photos online, get photos printed online, what have you, as something that has gone to pretty much everyone in America at this point. Digital music is getting there, I would say, in terms of what iPod density is. I think the thing about the bigger business opportunity that's a little challenging is, might be heresy to say it, but some of, especially in the movie business, some of that was sort of built on what I would call kind of like false pretenses, right? So if someone's 22 and you say, well, here's the way windowing works. First, it can come out in theaters. Then you might be able to see it on a plane. Then you can be able to see it in a hotel room. Then you can actually buy a physical disc, but you can't see it on VOD. You got to wait for VOD. Then after VOD, it goes to pay. Like, hey, whoever came up with those windows, absolute genius. But if I'm 22, there's not any sort of native intrinsic, like, yeah, that makes sense. That's how movies should be made available to me. There should be multiple bites at it. I should pay a different price every time. That's logical. Let's carry on with a model like that. And that's where coming up with the new model that somehow, is founded on something people can actually relate to, which is my friend in Sweden who wants to watch The Sopranos tomorrow, not when Sweden's Channel 4 has it next year, or the Saturday Night Live skit that I missed and I want to be able to buy it on Sunday because I just heard it was hilarious. Like, I don't know how you can stop those forces. You just need to be able to harness them. And I mean, HBO On Demand in terms of a cable VOD product is something I'm sure that your test through the roof, people love it because it does do what they want it to do. But in so many other instances, people are like, who set this up and why?
Well, I think it's who we train in terms of this we'll call it psychological and user shift that you're describing. Because if we collapse the windows and it were 22-year-olds, it would be a real mess because 22-year-olds, last I checked, don't have that much money in disposable income. They have their parents' disposable income.
Aren't they your big box office folks right now, though?
No, for us, I mean, the core,
you.
well, for us, and us is usually the movie world, too. I mean, it's truly a later stage. I mean, if you look at the profitability of DVDs in a movie life cycle, it's the only thing that comes close to a premium subscription television to the value of movie studios.
Sure.
There's only two windows that do it like we do it. DVDs, and that's a slowly declining business over time. Maybe the new DVD will do something. And then downloads will start to kick in, hopefully, and premium subscription television. So you really have to appeal, if you're going to start talking about collapsing windows, to the notion that content that's much earlier in Windows is going to be a heck of a lot more money. Because I'll tell you, this is VC economics. Get out of your business, I mean, out of your heads that everybody in Hollywood drives a Ferrari or a Maserati or a Lamborghini. Ira does, but I'm like in the Accord. I'm not kidding you. I am serious. So really, you have to, you've been doing it a lot longer than I have to. So you really have to start thinking about who's going to pay a lot of money because it's VC odds. And last I checked, VC odds are maybe 1 in 20, if you're lucky, on making something somewhat successful. It's the same in TV. It's the same in the movie business. So we can strip away a lot of, and I'm talking about that premiere content, we can strip a lot of it away and have not much of it. And that might be fine for the world, and we can all watch each other's videos that we all make. And some of us will become great movie makers and make a lot of money. But I think we got to be careful when we talk about, I am all for multiple platforms. I'm all for experimentation. But I'm all for really pragmatic, sort of the realpolitik of the media world, which is it costs a lot. And a lot of costs can still be taken out, but it still costs a lot. So.
I think where this all started actually was around age, right?
Yeah,
and,
right.
And it's
Thank you.
everyone tries to keep bringing it back to that. But the more I listen to everybody, and the more I've been kind of quietly thinking about it, it's not about age. Like, age is not the issue. Now maybe it's the 22-year-olds that are sort of trying to break the mold a little bit and calling into question the windowing system that we have in place today, or trying new technologies like MySpace or YouTube. But at the end of the day, as we're starting to roll out our user-generated video service later this year, I was sitting down with our marketing team, and they did the typical thing that all marketing people do. They come in and they say, well, here's our target market, and it's 18 to 25-year-olds, and they go very demographic. And so, well, that's not your target market. Maybe that's some people that might use this. But really what your target is the scenario. It's people that want to share great content with other people, whether it's with the world in a YouTube type scenario where they just want to publish out to everybody, or with their friends and family. And that could be a 22-year-old kid, that could be a 65-year-old grandmother who has a video of her kids, or or me, mid-30s guy who wants to share a video with my mom who lives on the other coast. And so it's about the scenarios and about taking the technology and making those scenarios easy. Yes, there will be early adopters, and they will typically be younger and more affluent and have some certain demographic profiles. But really the goal is to take that early adopter, look at the broader scenario, and make it easy for everybody. Because I think, yes, a 45-year-old woman in Texas is probably just as interested in how she can watch, Sopranos when it airs, if she doesn't own, have a subscription. So I think we've got to look at it more broadly than just around the age question.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And just to add a final point there on age, I don't think it's really about age as much as it is about consumer expectations of sort of what you want, when you want it. And I think that, just looking at myself, I'm in my 30s as well, and, I'm not a 22-year-old, but I don't expect to have to wait for a song to come on the radio anymore. Before I go grab it, if the mood hits me, I go grab it, and I pull it down. And, I think that when we looked at our own website recently, and we started talking about some marketing issues, it was the same thing. It was really tempting to sort of look at 18 to 34-year-olds. They were really well represented on our site. But the bottom line is our website was really about people who love TV and movies. And it really didn't matter how they viewed it. It was about that. It wasn't about age. It was about their expectations. And now it's about how they expect to consume those mediums. So,
Okay, I don't know. Nice segue follow-up then. The panel up here, obviously with Tribune, AOL, MSN, MySpace, and Comcast, and maybe a little bit of HBO. How, 10 years from now, you have 10 years from now, are networks really going to be the aggregators of content, an HBO or an ABC, or is it really going to be an AOL, MSN, or Google? I mean, how, and I know, Zaptuit, Tribune has a new service coming out. How, if everything is available all over the place, how are consumers going to discover this content? And just more specifically, speak from your company, what are your plans to address that? How are you planning to address this world that's coming where it's going to get harder and harder for people to discover content? There isn't a Fred Silverman in New York telling you what you're going to watch on Friday night. How are you guys doing that? Ty, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think, well, we already touched on self-programming, and our view essentially is that I think that lifestyle brands as networks are still going to exist, and insofar as you have things like MTV or Comedy Central or any one of the Viacom networks are lifestyle brands that people sort of subscribe to, and I think that those still have value for people who live that lifestyle, or Speed Network, or as you will. From our perspective, the way that we're trying to sort of approach that scenario is twofold. One, without getting into cable infrastructure, right now it's cheaper to deliver things over traditional cable backbone than it is over IP, which is why Verizon, for example, is using just IP to a certain point, and then into the home it's just traditional cable infrastructure over copper. Over time, the next 2 years or so, the cost of delivering video over IP into a home at sort of full screen resolution or HD to traditional set-top boxes is going to be lower than it is using traditional MPEG-2 sort of distribution. And from that perspective, that would sort of point towards cable networks and other providers going to an all IP-based network. And when you do that, essentially any stream can be delivered anywhere at any time, especially if it's on your own backbone. And so the things that we're talking about with regards to the availability of content will rise. And at that point, for someone who's providing handsets and PC delivery and set-top box delivery, what becomes paramount are some of the things that my friend from TMS was mentioning. Basically, how do you allow people to self-program and find this material? And that is going to be syndicated through the lifestyle brands, it's going to be syndicated through friends, and then it's going to be syndicated through trusted lifestyle sources that are traditionally not in the TV space. So for example, Oprah has her book club of the month. If she had a slate of TV shows that were not all on Oxygen, for example, somebody could easily subscribe to that, and that would be a particular lifestyle brand that you're subscribing to. And so I still think that there's going to be the notion of trusted sources, but I think that the diversity of those trusted sources is going to bloom and blossom when we move to a sort of all IP distribution, which will be transparent to the consumer.
Yeah.
John,
So you
jumping
can
out
all,
of the
can I
seat.
just so you can all beat up on me, the rest of the panel, because we're the only like pure content play, and I'll keep our Time Warner Cable guys out of this for now. I mean, I find that scenario very appealing as a consumer, but he didn't mention HBO because we're not a lifestyle brand, and that's a good point.
I would disagree, actually.
Well, we're not a lifestyle brand in the way that you position the lifestyle brands that you were talking about.
Okay,
in Viacom.
without
Right.
well, without brown nosing, you're a lifestyle brand for high quality content.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
On the other hand, we're a very large aggregator of studio output, and we're a very small producer relatively of content. We just happen to make some great content, and hopefully we can knock on whatever this is, keep doing it. But really, what I think is the issue is, it's not about using what I will call a bait and switch opportunity to make money off of content. It's about finding out how consumers want to access their content and what content it is. Because you know what? The reality is there's a lot of passive viewing experience from a lot of very expensive television production. You look at the top ratings of Nielsen, it's gone down a lot. A lot of people are playing video games, they're on MySpace, whatever. People want to do that. And the problem here is that if you start thinking about disaggregated models, right, networks disaggregating and everybody being able to program their own network, which personalization is a good thing, the problem is it doesn't support the economics of the business. So I don't want to sound like the sky is falling, Chicken Little, I guess, but we have a union-based infrastructure for delivering content. They're called the guilds, they're called unions, and they are collectively bargain with us. We can't produce at extremely low-cost thresholds to meet this sort of everybody gets all the content all the time model. And don't forget, every cable network in the United States was built on the back of the content that went through it. So what I'm trying to get to, I'm sorry to belabor the point, is Apple does not make money on the music. The music industry doesn't make enough money on that music. They make the money on the hardware, right? I don't mean to knock holes at Microsoft. I have PCs. I actually like PCs. But they make money on middleware, software, and a lot of other things. So the content is an addition to that revenue stream. But when I'm out there with my naked rear end in one business model, and it's just content, it's a really different world when we start talking about the Googles and Yahoos and the Comcasts and the MySpaces, and Tribune, you'll just be helping us all do this. So you're the arms merchant in the middle of it all. And the Microsofts, making it easy to pull apart my high-end lifestyle brand called HBO. So we're very concerned with how this works, and what we're doing is partnering with a lot of these folks, and I think our friends at the end of the table, not that we're all friends, but at AOL, we're doing some really exciting things with them. So,
Like what?
Well, Big Love is up right now. You can preview Big Love on HBO's Big Love on AOL. I mean, where I wanted to sort of take off from this is, I think at AOL, it strikes me there's kind of three ways you can go down this. One is, and everybody will, and we will, it is user-generated content or user-contextualized content. I don't know, we need a name for that, right? Where the best bubbles to the top and people rate it, it's community-based. Then there's the original programming game, and as described there, extremely expensive, low hit ratio. I think somewhere in the middle here, where I'm spending a lot of my thinking, is around how do you de-commoditize commodity content? Right? How do you, when everybody and all my competitors have music videos, how do I make them better to watch on AOL? That's great. How do I make trailers a better experience on MoviePhone? And to me, the ultimate example of this, and where we were talking about those trusted lifestyle brands, and I use this example a lot, but it is in sports highlights, that you have the ultimate commodity content play in sports highlights. They're all licensable, and Fox, God love them, has tried many, many times to mount a competitor to SportsCenter, and at the end of the day, SportsCenter is, if you want to own one brand or you want to own a money-making machine, league rights aside, it's probably ESPN. Why? Because the context they put around commodity content was so great, it got bigger than the content, right? SportsCenter and Booyah and all that stuff is actually more important than the Phillies won 7-6. And that, if I can do that with commodity content, I think I win.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. It's not about completely democratizing the content industry and saying, hey, content's going to exist wherever it exists and everybody has access to it. There will always be, as to Ty's original point, there will always be these, whether you call them lifestyle brands or tastemakers, or there will always be the element of programming, because the reality is 80% of people don't really want to go out and search around for content and create their own custom station. They want to have more of a passive experience. They would like it more personalized. They would like to just be able to hit play and have great content come. And the more that we can continue to program that, and I will, I think Eric and I will be competing over whether it's better to watch music videos on MSN or on AOL, and I think that's a great area to compete in, because you create these great content experiences that add things like community and recommendations based on, well, you liked this music video and you liked this show from HBO, well, maybe you might like this show that was an independent film that was created or something like that. So there's ways that you can layer technology on top of the content industry to make the overall content experience better without completely democratizing it and just making it a world where it's all based on search and keywords, and it's a completely impersonal experience, which is, I think, the nightmare scenario that everybody has.
Yeah, you started this by the disaggregation of the networks, basically. And the likelihood of that, and I agree with a few of the panelists down to my right about that. I think the likely outcome is really at some level of all of the above, and the business models will shake out in what works, what's passive, what's absolutely totally personalized for your own liking. I think for our purposes in having to tell people about what's available and what's out there, we have to look at it as also some combination of all of the above. How do we do that? How do we track that kind of world? And one of the things that AOL and MSN was just talking about was how do you dress up, commodity content? How do you dress up data? How do you dress up trailers? And one of the things is really the human element. We've talked a lot about search engines. We've talked a little bit about recommendation engines and personalization and those types of technologies. But one of the things that we think about every day is, do we have good editors that are writing great, compelling stories? Are they telling people what's great on TV, what's great on movies? What should you be watching? What are the recommendations that are out there? We spit out a lot of that content every day, and it really is to distinguish the many, many things that are available. So I think at the end of the day, all of these scenarios for the disaggregation or aggregation of content are likely to play out in certain increments, and it's just really important to help people make sense of all that.
Well, do you need to have those editors? I mean, does AOL need to have those editors, or is Josh's model in MySpace where Joe Blow gets to be that editor for you?
I think you do need to have an element. You do need to have something. You need to steer the ship somehow. It's like that cat and mouse game of almost somebody's got to evangelize something cool and let it then trickle down. And then from there is a branch of everything else that's out there. And we find that in music on MySpace all the time. Same with AOL. It's got to be the same way.
Yeah, you have to model behavior, but I think what we've learned and what I'm hoping to empower across the properties that I oversee is I don't want to be the sole framing device. I don't want to be the only one. In fact, I want to have 10,000 people frame the same, something as simple as 7 photos in a photo gallery. Right? Let you guys knock yourselves out. We'll do one, you do a million, and probably all win again. It's like if you can make that engine run by itself, you put a little fuel in and you model great behavior, I think it becomes really self-perpetuating.
You watch the trendsetters, you watch the tastemakers, you see what they're reacting to, you kind of work with them, and it's worked. I think, like I said, I think for AOL it's worked, and I think for MySpace it's definitely worked as well. Yeah, and it works on all platforms. Music, in TV, soon to be comedy. I think it's going to be the same way.
I think the user-generated information is great stuff. I also think there's room for professional editors and people who understand certain industries to sort of guide that. And I really believe that at the end of the day, it's kind of a combination of all of those things. And it really, the bottom line in this whole conversation has been about choice. And it really is about giving consumers that choice. It isn't that you want to automatically aggregate your own television network every day. Some days, you want a really passive experience. So it's about offering that choice. It's about different levels of different things that work for different people. And we've talked about this whole value chain, starting from content producers all the way to the end consumer. And it needs to work for everybody in that value chain. And so where we end up really needs to work. And I think those are the growing pains that we're going through right now, why we have so many questions on this panel. I mean, that's frankly just what's happening. That's the stage we're at.
And the last point on the editors, I do think that, it's something Josh alluded to, that the community at large, editors from the community at large, will also start to tier off, so that you'll have sort of the upper echelon experts in the community, right? There's a guy who I've been friends with for years who's probably one of the best experts on movies and pop culture that I've ever met in all the years in the industry. So he's a guy I go to if I'm looking for a new movie to go see. Or another friend he is the guy for local Seattle bands. And so he's a tastemaker. He's essentially one of my personal editors, right? And so we may have we'll go and hire professional editors on staff. Obviously we can't hire all the great editorial talent between AOL and Yahoo and MSN. But we can activate the community, and yeah, that 90% of it might not be great stuff, but the 10% of the super users, the real experts, those guys will start to bubble to the top. And whether you do that algorithmically, you look at things like the playlists on iTunes, where people can publish playlists and you can rate popular playlists. Those things will start to bubble to the top. In the case of MSN, there have been a few of those times where we've seen people who have been super active, and we've just gone and hired them. We gave him full-time jobs. This guy was a guy in a band who was sort of an expert in the music scene, and so we hired him as our senior editor for music. So I think there are ways to surface that great expertise in the community and still have that trusted editorial voice that we're all striving for.
A great example is like the Dredge Report. I mean, that's how to summarize all the the top headlines in a way that so many people will want to see it, and I think it's a success. So it's not just about music, it's about news, it's about sports, it's about everything, it's every lifestyle aspect that you participate in.
Right. No, I totally agree with you, Rob. And I mean, if somehow when people had tripod personal web pages, no one discovered a new media commentator. But when you called it a blog, now there's 10,000 people who are as legitimized as anybody who was a talking head on television or in print. And in fact, if anything, it's all the print and TV people are so busy reacting to the bloggers now. I mean, it's completely pivoted. But I think that sort of pull the best out, skim the cream off, and put that across our broad networks. That's just wins for everybody.
Okay. I am going to actually open up the questions from the floor. Try to keep them brief, and we'll go from there. We'll start right there.
I'm curious.
Oh, state who you are, too.
David Blood, Force of Peace. I'm just curious about you all about lifestyle networks and all that. So what do you guys see happening to the CBS and NBC things, and Fox actually? Much never mind my TV, my network CBS. What do you guys see happening to those guys? Those are sort of big generalist kinds of networks that pull together stuff of a wide variety. Where do they go in the future?
Who wants to tell them they're in trouble?
I'll stick my head into the meat grinder there. Just a plug for HBO. We are the world's most profitable television network, and we do it with 1/10 the number of people that they have. And I think they're in a real tough position. But I would say there is a strong place for the networks for a one-stop shop, if they tune their models over time, for types of programming that you would be interested in when you're in passive mode. That doesn't mean that the programming doesn't have active elements wrapped around it, but that you're in more passive mode. And unfortunately for them, there are a lot of people who are trying to claim that space, and who are claiming that space in the cable network side. And Comcast has done a fantastic job in launching new networks and helping new networks get launched, as well as Time Warner Cable. So I think they have a real tough go. Actually, I think the people who we should really maybe have a moment of silence for are the independent affiliates of those networks. Because if you look at what's going on in the iTunes world and any of these experiments that they're doing in order to get the content directly to you, it just increasingly diminishes the affiliate's weight in the market beyond anything except for local news and a syndication window for some syndicated program.
The affiliates sort of share the same space in a lot of ways as theater owners do. And they're like, traditionally people come and watch the networks.
That's right.
And that role definitely is being diminished. But to answer your question, I think CBS, which is supposed to be, when the split happened, was supposed to be the value network, has actually been very fleet of foot and very nimble. And they've shown themselves to say, we're not quite sure how it's going to work out, but we're going to place a lot of bets, and through that, and through analyzing which bets work and how they work, that we're going to be successful. So I think that's a model. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but it looks to me like that they're doing a very good job as a network to maintain what they have in terms of audience and reach. And then the other component of that is that everything that we're talking about in terms of the models that exist outside of the traditional network model tend to be the pay-for-play. Even for basic cable, you're paying for the tier. Well, CBS just got retransmission rights from Verizon, but that's a separate issue. But by and large, the cable networks still aggregate audiences better than, I'm sorry, the broadcast networks aggregate audiences more than anybody else. And if it's ad-driven and they can deliver more value in terms of those ads, then I think that there's a very, very long road for them. The main issue is that I should never see a Ford F-150 ad because I'm never going to buy a truck. So they have to figure out, how to do that in a targeted fashion.
Just one last point on that quickly is that I think it's about figuring out their economics. That it costs so much to bring a show to air, and obviously there's a little bit of when-if scenario here, but it's worth pointing out. I mean, ABC aired one episode of Emily's Reasons Why. It was canceled after one episode. I think it did a 5 or a 6 thereabouts, right? 6, 7, 8, 9 million people watched it, which would be the biggest internet success story of all time. Or cable, right? Twice the, well, it would be Sopranos quality number, or twice The Shield or something like that, and it gets booted off the air after one night. That just says we can't afford to have something that isn't a gigantic hit, but there's got to be an economic way that ABC, CBS, and Fox reinvent themselves and get that stuff out there, because the numbers are still so huge.
Okay. Question right there. I'm sorry, state your name and where.
Alan Mostow, here, TVandCars.com. Local and network offerings, infotainment, provide a real tier of information of how we find out what's going to be cool. It also creates a premise for these tiered release dates. Gives the product a chance to build and create an identity in the public's mind as to what is cool, what do we want to see. Then they'll go to their internet and drill down and get more information, and go to MySpace and see what their peers think. But I think that's, you can't sell that whole broadcast tier short. I think it's going to mutate.
Do you have
it's going to last for a long time.
Do you have a question?
Just
Okay. Any questions, please? Right here in the front. State your name, please.
Hi, Catherine Flincham, Associate Publisher of Creative Screenwriting Magazine. TV became successful quickly because there was a whole new kind of programming. But all that seems to be coming out is repurposed onto the internet and onto even mobisodes. What are your companies doing to develop a new tier of creators who are not unionized and who are able to work in this new genre and who may not be 17 years old?
You should repeat the question, because I don't think people...
It's specifically what are your companies doing to create content for mobile devices, specifically?
To create the new generation of content providers specifically for online.
Which aren't unionized.
I won't speak to the union issue, but we are actually dedicating funds within our programming and development budgets to specifically create new HBO-branded programming, and maybe co-branded with other people for new platforms. So not Sopranos on the mobile device in a different form, even chopped up Sopranos or additional episodes of Sopranos, or backstory on Sopranos, but brand new stuff. And one announcement that we did lately, and if you haven't seen this guy perform, I actually got the opportunity to see Dane Cook perform. Dane Cook, if you're probably 22, is one of the biggest, comedic superstars to have ever, I would say, sort of hit. And we signed him for a multi-platform deal, which is now how we're doing all our deals, so that we can work with Dane to create original programming for, Rob's MSN, for Ty's, Portal and their VOD servers, and for our friends certainly at AOL first and foremost. So we're actually starting it right now. It took a while to get there because it's hard to throw additional money beyond the sort of core business for our smaller network, but it's starting to happen, and we're not the only ones doing it.
Well, I think I can actually.
I just wanted to, I completely agree with you that the type of program that you're seeing today, whether it's created from head content from major studios or from from users themselves, is fairly typical stuff. It is a lot of repurposed or traditional stuff. And if you look back over the evolution of media from from newspaper to radio, right? The first people loved radio at first because it was just somebody reading the newspaper, right? Reading news articles, and they would sit around and listen to someone reading news articles. And then all of a sudden you started to see the evolution happen where we realized, okay, this medium allows us to do different things. We can do sound effects, and we can tell stories, and we can make it a more narrative environment. And then the same thing happened when you went from radio to TV. The first TV shows, you'd see people, basically reading radio shows and whipping the whip in the background for the sound effects. And then all of a sudden we realized, hey, we can do multi-camera and we can do all these different things. And I think we're at the exact same place with the internet, right? We're taking existing content, TV content as it exists today, movie content as it exists today, and we're just finding new ways to distribute it. But we're just starting to enter that phase where we're realizing, how many people here were involved back in the early days of interactive TV, right? And the interactive TV trials where, okay, I could click on somebody's shirt in a TV show, and I could go buy it, and it was all science fiction, and cars would fly and that kind of stuff. But now we're getting to that point where we can realize, okay, well, I can start interacting with the content. I can start drilling into unique content. Maybe if I want to see an extended scene, or I want to get more information, or I want to talk to my friends about it and have a chat about specific things. I think that's where we're going to start to invest, certainly from MSN's standpoint, in building out with the industry to take the great content that exists, figure out how we go beyond repurposing it to create a truly interactive community-based experience around the content that you can only deliver online.
And the way that, I'm sorry, I apologize, go ahead.
No, you can go.
No, I promise, go ahead.
I was just going to say two things to John's comment about Dane Cook. This guy's a phenomenon. I mean, he's outstanding. I mean, the guy jumped from 900,000 friends on MySpace to actually hosting Saturday Night Live. And with an exception to the big guys, the Steve Martins of the world, that's amazing. And so kudos to you and all the deals that you're going to pull off with him. We want some of that too. That'd be great.
That's an interesting question. Should MySpace take credit?
News Corp, Time Warner.
Well,
News Corp. No, I'm just joking.
The fact is that he does it on his own. By the way, I know. He does it on his own, by the way, of evangelizing what he's done and where he's been, which is great. And that's why he's going to continue to succeed. And I always use the model with bands that are trying to succeed. And I'd say the Dane is the same thing. You got to do it organically, and like Dane did it no better. I mean, he hit Billboard charts. I'm gonna butcher it. What's the number? Like number 2?
It was first top 10 comedy album. Since,
yeah, it's just amazing. So I think in the future there's gonna be more people like Dane that are not necessarily just in the world of comedy. They're gonna be, woodworkers. I don't know. Florists. Thank you.
Yeah, seemed like they came out of nowhere, but
exactly.
The truth is,
I mean, there's gonna be a lot of Martha Stewarts that are going to be the real Martha Stewarts, and you're seeing them on smaller cable programmings too. And then to answer your question, what are we doing to make things easier for our users, I suppose, in a sense? iMovie, iFilm, or not iFilm, but iMovie, allowing just people to make movies and content.
Podcasts.
Exactly. So you can do it, you can cut it, then get it on a podcast, or in the sense of MySpace Film, we're offering them tools to actually get it there. And there's some other great sites out there that allow, you can create it, you can display it, and now what? Now what do you do? Now get it out there. And I think all of us up here, it's probably our job to think about that, and how do we get it, and how do we go bigger for these guys that started off just doing something on their own. And we will.
And then to answer, from our perspective, just putting my old school cap for a little bit, on the VOD side of things, it's very hard to get a linear cable network, 24/7 channel. Like, that's nigh impossible. But for VOD, there are a lot of people who are sort of blossoming and becoming brands in their own rights directly on VOD. Anime Channel was one, and they actually became a full-time linear network. There's another sort of urban-themed channel that we have that has 3 major sponsors, and that's working out well for everybody, consumers included. So I think there are a lot of opportunities through non-traditional distribution channels for, I won't say people from Canada, but people who aren't working in unions.
Eric, did you want to add something?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I'm sorry, is there another question in the audience? I got questions. Then we'll continue. It's interesting just talking a little bit about different platforms and talking about mobile and what have you. And you all are up here are different services that were started on one platform. I don't know if you can talk a little bit about future plans and specifically mobile and portable devices and how you plan to engage. Are you going to change your content? Do you have to change your content or your programming, or how are you engaging, whether it's a wired wireless PSP or an iPod or what have you.
I think from our standpoint, you know, our goal, as I said to start off, was that, you know, we want to enable people to experience content wherever and whenever they want, and I think that's probably a shared goal by just about everyone up here. But I think, you know, we have a bunch of different assets between, you know, our investments in mobile and the living room and the PC, portable devices. And I think our real goal is that, you know, whether or not you change the content, I think that's, you know, sort of up to the user. I think if somebody wants to watch a full-length film on an iPod video, it's, you know, it's a little painful right now. It's a small screen, but, you know, for the context, it might be the right thing. I've done it on a plane, and you sort of expect to not have a great experience when you're riding in coach anyway, so that's probably the highlight. So I think, you know, the key is to have that element of your personalized, your channel, your entertainment that you can take with you wherever, and whether or not you want to watch, you know, start watching an episode of Sopranos or Big Love at home in your living room in the great environment, and then you've got to go and you're going to take the train to work and be able to continue to watch that on your mobile device and have your preferences and your recommendations and your experience follow you as you move from place to place. I think that's the big opportunity, and that's the big win for multi-platform.
So is MSN going to be changing its service to service each platform?
It's not about necessarily changing the service. We'll definitely be exposing, and we already do this today with a lot of the non-video content, the text, the web-based content, which is easy to move, you know, to mobile phones. Mobile phone is a hard platform, for instance, just because you've got to get the right codecs and the right player on the phone. But it's easier for HTML, and we do that today, and we'll continue to really push there so that you can take any of our content and experience it wherever, whenever you want. So yes, we will be exposing all of that content out there on all those platforms.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have a little bit different perspective than the rest of my panelists here, because most of you are, you know, either in content or distribution at some level. You know, I think one of the things that we really have to consider is all the different ways that you distribute this content is really proliferating, but it's also the ways in which you view it. So if you look at all the devices, and they're virtually limitless. I mean, they really are. As long as it's connected, you can view pretty much anything on any device, and we've talked about all those different ways that you can do that today. So for us, one of the things that we really have to consider is how do we get our information to those devices. And so we've started to do some interesting things in new and innovative ways about how we actually, you know, send television and movie data to wireless devices, to other new types of devices that are out there. We do that through web services now. We have a unique way that we can deliver data. Basically, you know, you call up the information you need. It can be adapted to just about any device. That's a very different thing than sending a big, huge data feed, you know, to a web customer or to an MSO. You can call it, you can get it as you need it, and it's really extensible across all different kinds of